Successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.
Good morning. My name is Michael Carey, and before we begin, I just note for the record that I will serve as acting chair of today's meeting. I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the New York Convention Center Development Corporation for this Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. I'd like to note for the record that this meeting is being webcast. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. We welcome public comment on today's agenda items. I will note, however, for the record that the public was given the opportunity to comment on the agenda items by submitting their written comments by 3 p.m. yesterday, but no comments were received. I will also note that we do not have any members of the public attending today's meeting. Before we begin the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on today's agenda. If so, I would ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We will then be sure that you may recuse yourselves from any discussion or vote with regard to such item or items when they come up. There being none, I would just note that I believe, Lee, you wanted to make a comment?
I'd like to ask a question, if I could, of Rebecca and others. I still don't understand exactly, from a fiduciary standpoint, what happened with Site K. I didn't really understand why that didn't come under the auspice of the board for ratification, and why we found out about it with a press release at the last minute. It doesn't seem right. It seemed like fiduciarily that should have gone through this board. And if it wasn't supposed to, I'd like to understand why, so I'm educated.
Sure. So we followed all of the procurement and disposition guidelines that are set forth by ESD that all of the subsidiaries follow, and ESD corporate, if you're going to that board, they followed as well. This board adopted those, both the disposition and the procurement guidelines in it was September of 22. And so we did not deviate from that. And we followed that very strictly. There was a thorough review process, but we have a closed procurement process so that there are not outside influences on those decisions and personal, conflicts of interest brought into those decisions. So, we did follow the guidelines that this board adopted.
And it will come to the board.
Yes, yes.
For the transaction, as the transaction evolves and the general project plan moves forward, it will have to come to this board.
Oh,
Yes.
so what was announced was the intention, or what?
Conditional designation. Conditional
des-
designation of the development.
And then the final approval will come to this board?
We will bring GPP modifications in front of this board. There will be public hearings related to those modifications. We will bring any comments from the public back to this board. The board will have involvement going forward, yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes.
I just want to note for the record, at Javits, we do a very rigorous procurement process, probably the best procurement process I've seen. But all of those procurements are in fact approved by the board. So I'm a little, I'm a little confused at the inconsistency because everybody has conflicts, and that's why the chairman asks for conflicts to be disclosed. So I don't think because something's a procurement and follows the rules doesn't mean it shouldn't be ratified by the board, because we certainly do that at Javits. So I'm trying to understand the inconsistency between the two. I understand we're going to be dealing with this later on, and that's fine. I don't understand the relationship to the procurement, the conflict, and the board approving it.
I mean, I think there's a difference between procurements where a contract, to enter into a contract for buying widgets is brought to the board versus an RFP dealing with selecting a development team for a piece of property that the corporation owns. I think this board knew that the RFP was going out.
Yes, they were notified in advance, yes.
And so then there's a closed procurement process where a committee, including a staffer from CCOC,
Right,
was on that
executive level
committee,
staff, yes.
so votes and selects the best proposal in a closed environment, and that's what we're required to do. And so it's different from bringing any kind of normal, business contract to the board for approval.
It's a fair differentiation. I'm not debating that's not a fair differentiation. I just am a little confused. So,
And I believe the statement that's made at the beginning of every board meeting about do any directors have any conflicts is separate and apart from what I think Rebecca was saying, because I think we don't want outside influence, which is beyond just the conflicts.
Right, yes, exactly. And you had contacted me, Lee, as, back in August of '23, that you did have a conflict, rightfully so, and you need to recuse from decisions going forward.
That's the point, is I would have recused myself. That was the whole point.
Right. So,
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo sort of the same thing, because I remember, Rebecca, when you called, thank you, to give me a heads up that there was going to be a press release. And I understand, I ran the EDC board, I've been on this board since its inception, so I know there are protocols. I was involved in the design build process for the Javits. I do think there may be a better way of doing this, so I would just ask you to reflect upon that. Adherence to the protocols notwithstanding, of course, but
I'm open to suggestions.
Okay, well,
if there's,
I'm
I
giving
have
you-
protocols I have to follow.
I get
But
it.
I am open to suggestions if you feel that the communication is not up to your
Well,
likings.
my-
I can, we can take those
Yeah.
into consideration.
Well, my suggestion is that you think about it, and maybe we can talk about it afterwards or offline.
Sure.
I'm not condemning anybody. I know you followed the protocols. I
Right.
just don't think it was the best way to do things. And so, but I could be wrong.
It is consistent with how we
Yes.
do all our RFPs across our subsidiaries and across our ESD board.
Okay. So be it. No argument. Okay. Other than that, hearing no conflicts, and the foregoing being noted for the record, I will now ask Rebecca, our president, to start things off with the president's report.
Great,
I will
thank you.
note for the record that this item is being presented for information only, and no vote will be required. Rebecca?
Great, thank you very much. So I'd like to begin today by discussing some personnel changes with our sister agency, New York Convention Center Operating Corporation. As I know you're aware, Alan Steele has retired from his role as CEO of the Javits Center, leaving behind a rich legacy of growth, collaboration, and innovative sustainability initiatives. I know the rooftop farm at Javits had a special place in Alan's heart. I was very happy to hear that that was aptly named in his honor, Steele Farm. And I'd like to thank him. I know he was not able to make the meeting today, unfortunately, but thank him for his dedication and service to New York. And we wish him all the best in his next chapter.
We'll make sure it's conveyed.
Yes, thank you. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome Joyce Leviston as the new CEO of Javits. Joyce is with us here today. Joyce brings over 30 years of high caliber industry experience with her, having worked in convention centers across the country. and has a proven track record of delivery and results. And I'm thrilled to see her take the helm of Javits. And I've met with Joyce, and I'm really excited to see her ideas for the Javits Center come to fruition. And so, welcome to Joyce, and we look forward to great things. So. Okay, on to CCDC business here. So as mentioned during previous meetings with respect to the expansion project, there were a handful of items left to be done pertaining to construction deficiencies, none of which affect safety or operations of the facility. CCDC has the requisite operating permits in place. We continue to work with DASNY to secure the final permanent certificate of occupancy. I'm happy to share that all of the FDNY letters of approval have been obtained, and all outstanding FDNY issues have been resolved. CCOC is addressing one last remaining item that is subject to a special inspection, and we're working toward resolution of that, and hopefully we'll have that resolved within the next few weeks, and we'll be able to obtain final DASNY approval. On to our Site K disposition. So just to remind everyone here and members of the public, Site K is between 35th and 36th Streets and 11th Avenue and Hudson Boulevard West. So it's nestled between Javits and Bella Asphalt Park. After thorough review, the Hudson Boulevard Collective, a partnership of BRP companies, BXP, the Moynihan Group, and Urbane Development, with minority-owned businesses representing 31% of the development team, Hudson Boulevard Collective has been conditionally designated to create a transformative $1.35 billion mixed-use project at Site K to be named Hudson. The project consists of 2 towers. The 72-story East Tower of Hudson will deliver one of the largest mixed-income housing developments in the neighborhood. Of its 1,349 residential units, 30% will be permanently affordable, ensuring long-term housing stability for hundreds of New York families across different income levels. The 28-story West Tower will strengthen New York City's convention and tourism infrastructure with a flagship 455-room Hilton hotel development. The hotel component includes amenities designed to support the Javits Center operations, including food and beverage venues, pre-function areas, flexible informal meeting spaces, a fitness center, and outdoor amenities, including a rooftop overlooking the Hudson. The development's 5-story podium will establish a nexus of cultural, educational, and community facilities anchored by the 24,000 square foot permanent home of the Climate Museum. Emma's Torch is slated to operate a 4,000 square foot restaurant and training facility, providing paid culinary training and job placement services to refugees, asylees, and survivors of human trafficking, and complementing these facilities, a state-of-the-art 60,300 square foot lifetime fitness and wellness center will provide comprehensive health and wellness programming, including an outdoor swimming pool and roof terrace, serving both residents and the broader community. The Hudson development will create significant long-term economic opportunities for New York State through both construction and permanent job creation. The Hilton Hotel will particularly strengthen New York City's tourism economy by expanding accommodation options for Javits Center convention attendees, helping to attract more large-scale conventions and conferences to the city. Additionally, Hudson Boulevard Collective has designed extensive public space improvements that will transform the pedestrian experience along 35th Street, including new landscaping, seating areas, and improved lighting. On to our other property, the former truck marshalling yard site. So to remind the directors and members of the public, this site is located between 33rd and 34th Street and 11th and 12th Avenues. And while a disposition is, that's the intention with the site, there is no established timeline at this point. On to our neighboring site, the former slaughterhouse site. As previously approved by this board, CCDC has executed the light and air easement agreement and restricted declaration with the City of New York pertaining to the planned development at 495 11th Avenue, which is on the southwest corner of 40th Street and 11th Avenue and sits directly adjacent to the easternmost wall of the truck marshalling building. The next step in the process with the city and developer will pertain to the access agreement, which is still being finalized. The developer cannot begin construction and enter onto the Javits property until this access agreement is signed. CCOC has reviewed this document previously, and we continue to coordinate with the developer to provide documentation in order for CCOC to review construction phasing and site safety plans. Under the access agreement, during build-out of the new development, CCOC must review and approve weekly construction plans by the developer. CCOC will be consulted on any operational issues, and we will continue to coordinate in a manner that will not materially affect operations at Javits. The access agreement will, of course, be brought to this board for approval at a future meeting upon confirmation that both CCOC and CCDC are satisfied with the terms of the agreement. That concludes the updates for now. I'm happy to take any questions.
What is that development going to be?
The
This slaughterhouse?
the
location?
slaughterhouse. It's been I think in development for
Many
years at this point.
But
yes.
the plan is for a hotel, it's a hotel/residential.
Right. It's 2 towers. And one tower, the hotel will be, I think that's the south tower. And actually, they're working directly with CCOC. The developer is working with Domenico to, there is a planned skywalk between the hotel and
assume-
Javits Center. So there's a lot of coordination going on, but it's, it's sort of in their court as to when things move forward. So,
Can I ask a question about the Hilton Hotel?
sure.
And I just want to ask one of my colleagues, Brad, if he knows the answer. Was there ever a meeting between the Hilton Hotel and our Javits staff to talk about what makes sense in terms of public spaces that might be built in a new hotel that could compete with space we're trying to rent out at the convention center?
You're saying that for the slaughterhouse site?
No, for the Hilton Hotel.
Site K.
Yeah.
Hudson.
No.
It feels to me, given that this was, we can argue all we want, but the fact that a hotel was approved without a conversation with anyone at the Javits Center about public space, when we have a tremendous amount of public space. And it would seem to me, certainly a hotel is a wonderful idea. Nobody would debate that a hotel is not a wonderful idea. But when we talk about public space, before they start constructing, it would seem to me to be constructive for there to be a meeting with the Javits staff to make sure that we're not creating a competitive environment on public space. Because maybe the Hilton may want to use that space for some alternative use. I don't like the idea that we're potentially setting up a competitive environment in public space. They may only have 2 little conference rooms for all I know, but I think a discussion should be had before it gets
Understood.
finalized.
I think that's even more pertinent with respect to the slaughterhouse space.
100%.
We have less control there.
Yes,
Right, it's
yes,
our
much less
project. But
control.
we can, the Hilton Hotel is in a phase 2. It's not
Right.
the first part of that project that's going to be built, so we have time to make sure that those conversations.
That would be great, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Rebecca. All right, so we can continue with the agenda, which brings us right back to Rebecca
Thank you.
for item 1. Thank you, Rebecca. You're up again.
Thank you. On to our corporate action. So every March, all ESD subsidiaries, including CCDC, are required to adopt annual operating and capital budgets for the coming fiscal year, which spans April 1st, 2025 through March 31st, 2026. The proposed operating budget for fiscal year 25-26 in the amount of $202,921 is expected to fund standard operating expenses and in part will cover expenses expected to be incurred in connection with potential dispositions of CCDC excess property. The operating budget has an increase of less than 1% compared to last year's budget, as noted in the attachment to these materials. The proposed capital budget for fiscal year 25-26 in the amount of $23,450,000 is expected to fund any final project closeout work as necessary to secure final permits related to the expansion, DASNY permitting fees, project management, council, and other remaining consultant oversight work, and an anticipated Javits capital improvements funding agreement between CCDC and CCOC to be presented for authorization by the directors at a future meeting, And in keeping with current practice, directors will be asked to approve individual contracts or expenditures covered by the funding agreement as required. CCDC requests the board adopt the capital and operating budgets for the upcoming fiscal year, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rebecca. Is there a threshold for contracts that need to go to the board?
Yes, if
'Cause
it's...
I don't think you have to bring every contract to the board.
Correct, yes. So if it is below 250,000, it does not require board action.
All right, spend
Yes.
wisely.
I have a feeling most of the things that will fall under this agreement will be brought to the board.
Okay,
So,
okay.
yes.
All right, any questions? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion, please?
I move the budgets.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? And Vincent, I think, is also in favor, so I
Aye.
think we're good. Thank you, Vincent, thank you. All right, the next item. Let's see, let's go around the table. Rebecca?
Yes.
You're up
Thank
again.
you.
The Rebecca
Yes.
program.
So,
Keep it going.
Bit of a trip down memory lane here. So in December of 2018, CCDC entered into an amended and restated construction manager at risk agreement with Tishman Construction pertaining to the transformer building and utility relocation project. This is commonly referred to as the transformer agreement. Pursuant to that agreement, Tishman was responsible for producing applicable training plans to support maintenance and operation of newly constructed transformer equipment, training CCDC and CCOC employees on such equipment, and transitioning from construction to CCOC operation of the transformer building. Accordingly, under the transformer agreement, Tishman had the obligation to train CCDC and CCOC personnel on future use and maintenance of the transformer building. CCDC, as a development entity, had no staff with the expertise to receive or implement the required training, and so CCOC, as the operating entity, had a full existing staff capable of receiving and implementing the required training as a necessary precursor to operating and maintaining the transformer building post-construction. Therefore, CCDC and CCOC staff entered a transformer building capital training agreement under which CCOC staff would receive relevant training in connection with the transformer building operation. And to the extent CCOC staff costs increased as a result of transitioning the construction of the transformer building to the operation of the convention center, CCDC would fund certain related CCOC staff capital training costs. CCDC's funding obligation terminated as of substantial completion of the transformer building and was capped in an amount not to exceed $400,000. Due to the delays in permitting, CCOC assumed certain responsibilities that were the contractual obligation of the contractor because it was more cost-effective for CCOC to perform these services. As a result of CCOC stepping into these unplanned roles, the scope of the agreement was expanded, and accordingly, the costs incurred by CCOC and reimbursable by CCDC increased. CCDC staff now seek to amend the agreement in the additional amount of $220,000 for an aggregate amount of $620,000 in order to reimburse CCOC for expenses incurred. CCDC will fund these CCOC expenses with remaining construction funds. And with that, request is made for the directors to authorize an amendment to the Transformer Building Capital Training Agreement with New York Convention Center Operating Corporation.
I move the amendment.
Second.
Okay, I think I was supposed to ask if there are any comments. I don't think there are any comments, and also I note, as the earlier item, there were no public comments. No public comments on this one, so
Move the amendment.
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Okay. I think we passed.
Great.
Just, Rebecca, just notionally, and I don't want to do a deep dive on this, as long as Joyce is here. By the way, congratulations and welcome. New York is a great place. Is there a point where these types of costs become the responsibility of CCOC, just in terms of their operating budget and so forth, as opposed to be a reimbursable item from CCDC?
Well, we don't pay for their operating costs normally.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
What-
this is specific to the expansion project. So
Okay.
they assume responsibilities that Tishman would have performed,
Right,
but
and I
it was
understand that,
more
but I'm
cost
asking,
effective.
Is there a point of like stability where we say, okay, now you're on your own, or does this is it a continuing thing?
Well, no, as far as the transformer?
No, generally, more generally.
No, we don't pay for their operating costs,
No, no,
generally
no, no.
speaking.
I mean, I'm talking about like repairs, replacement, things like that. I mean, just give me a sense if you can.
So we will be, as mentioned in the budget materials, we're going to be bringing a funding agreement to the directors, and that is for capital costs
Right, that's what I'm
related
getting
to
at,
the
yeah.
building.
Okay.
That's all we're responsible for. As
And that-
far as under that funding agreement, we
Right.
will utilize remaining construction funds that were not utilized during the expansion to fund capital improvements and projects going forward.
Right, because we continue to collect money under the hotel tax, I
Yes.
assume, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay,
Is that, excuse me,
Well-
is that what one thing that bothers me, I'm going backwards and I'm sorry I'm doing this, but other miscellaneous costs, miscellaneous is such a nondescript word. I'm all for whatever we're going to spend in order to improve the building, but couldn't it be a little better defined as to what that money is going to go for?
It will be defined when it comes in front of the board. We're still working with CCOC. I have certain costs that I know that we have to settle up on the expansion. I've been informed that there are other costs that I have not seen yet related to the expansion. So once we understand what costs are outstanding, I can bring a funding agreement, and within that funding agreement, we will define what projects
I understand
Would
that.
be
but
covered by that agreement.
I'd be more comfortable if it said other miscellaneous costs associated with capital improvements, or something like that, as opposed to just miscellaneous $9 million.
Oh, I see what you're looking at, sorry. So we can only fund capital costs. The way our funds are set up, they can only be used on capital improvements and capital projects. So I understand that's maybe a little vague.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yes, it's not meant to be, I guess, in my mind and the way we think of it, the only thing that our money can go to is capital projects.
Yeah, maybe the
So-
minutes could reflect George's question and the very appropriate answer.
Sure,
Thank you.
sure.
okay. Debbie, I think I've run out of script.
There you go.
Uh-oh, okay, so Rebecca, thank you. Joyce, welcome again. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Public notwithstanding, Vincent? Okay, I think we can entertain a motion to dismiss, to adjourn, actually, not to dismiss. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Wrap.
Thank you.